Hey y'all, welcome back to our channel. This is Comic Edition. You are here for Office Hours episode 2. I am Malcolm.
And I'm Lindsay. We're your hosts, and today we're going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which hits theaters today. We are tremendously excited to go see it this evening. Malcolm, have you been spoiled on anything yet?
No spoilers.
No spoilers, none at all. Well, that's refreshing. I will say I'm going in with less spoilers. Sadly, just a little tiny bit of one though.
You have to be careful what you click on the internet.
Yeah, no, yesterday morning I was watching a YouTube video and I didn't even click on anything, but the next video started playing. And it was the first like 0.1 seconds of what they claim is a post-credit scene. Granted, I have not seen the film yet. I do not know for sure it is even a post-credit scene. For the sake of our conversation today, though, I promise, mum's the word, I'm not going to say anything.
All right, so we should get started. Let's start with the plot of the movie. So there's been a lot of trailers, especially lately, for the film. But I still don't feel like I have a grasp of what the movie is about. We know it's going to cover Rocket's story, etc. But what do we think the movie is about? What's the plot of the movie?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One thing you and I have talked about before when we've looked at how Marvel has advertised projects over the past year is they've given us a lot of information, a lot of directions beforehand. And this particular project is one where I feel like they've done the opposite, right? Like they want us to believe it's all about, are we going to lose Rocket? Are we going to lose Star-Lord? Kind of their origin story of Rocket. But beyond that, what really is the conflict? And going in, I think that might be a little bit of a distraction, right? People are coming out of this film, the people we've seen in early screenings, saying that it's one of the best films since Endgame, or if not the best film since Endgame. And I think the thing that we loved so much back then was how much we had our expectations subverted within the movie, right? Like Thanos dies in the first 5 minutes, and none of us saw that coming.
It shocked
So I
me.
think there's got to be right. Like my jaw hit the floor, my theater was like screaming. I think we've got to have some element like that as well. I don't think it can be as straightforward as simply being Rocket's origin story, although I do think that's going to lead a lot of it.
Yeah. I really have no clue. I'm just trying to piece together where we left off with volume 2. And we know in the post-credit scene, we see the creation of Adam Warlock, and we know we're going to see Adam, but that was in a conflict with Aisha and was that the Sovereign, right? Yeah. And the Sovereign, well, how do we then connect the Sovereign with Rocket's origin story with the High Evolutionary? We did see a scene in a trailer where a disheveled Aisha, which is a big deal for the Sovereign because, you know, their whole thing is perfection, is having a conversation with the High Evolutionary. So clearly she's going to him for help, or he's found her. I don't know what the relationship there is, but that has to be the driving force between the tension and the conflict in the movie, because we have to get Adam Warlock in some way with the High Evolutionary. Right.
Well, what happens in terms of that in the comics is the High Evolutionary is the one that like perfects Adam. And so I have a feeling that Aisha will probably come to him in a similar way, because that is his whole thing, right? Genetic perfectionism, and he probably already has a relationship to some degree with the Sovereign, given their like mutual interests. And so my guess is that maybe the Sovereign will seek out the High Evolutionary, trying to ask for help directly.
Yeah, I just assume that Adam Warlock attacks them. We've seen the scenes on Nowhere, and is not successful, and Aisha is frustrated, and perhaps that's what calls for her to reach out to the High Evolutionary, like, I want you to perfect my champion type of deal, make him stronger than he was before, because he needs to beat the Guardians.
I think you're absolutely onto something with that. And you know, we've seen, like you mentioned, some of those fight scenes from Nowhere in the trailer, and the one in particular of Nebula where she's like flying in the sky and her arm does like the cool separate, it's a very cool scene. But I think that whole, you know, debacle is happening probably in the first 20 minutes of the movie, right? Like he's gonna come for them out swinging. Early reviews do talk about like it's a very quick introduction to Adam. Don't know whether that's good or bad or what that looks like, but I do think that it'll probably be within the first like 15-20 minutes that we'll see him in action.
It feels like the type of thing where we're going to meet Adam, see him, he's going to operate, function, and then they're going to tell us who he is. Like, we know who he is, but they're going to go into detail after we've already met him, seen him fight, because the Guardians, of course, are going to be like, who in the heck is this? And that's information.
Do you have a strong attachment to Adam coming into this movie? I know he's a fan favorite from the comics.
No, not really. I haven't read a ton of Adam Warlock stuff other than the research that we do, just trying to figure whatever is going on in the movies. But no, I have no attachment. I'm happy with the actor that they've chosen. I think, well, I'll let everybody know after I watch this movie how happy I am, but I'm pretty sure I'll be good. They do
What
it.
are your expectations for him? Like, what role do you think he's going to play in the story?
Well, I mean, in the comics, he becomes at some point a part of the Guardians of the Galaxy. That's what I think we're going to get. So when they say it's the end of the Guardians, I don't know if they mean it's the end of the Guardians, like there will be no Guardians of the Galaxy group, or the who it consists of. The roster is about to shift and change. So the way we know it. So that's the big thing I have for the plot of the movie is the plot, the disillusion, dissolvement, whatever of this group, period, like they don't exist anymore? Or is it like the Avengers, where the Avengers did cease to exist at some point in the MCU so far, but it was just turnover in membership? Is
Yeah,
that
no, I think you're exactly right. I don't think we're going to by any means see the Guardians actually go away. They've been very careful, James Gunn specifically in interviews, about saying, well, in its current form, it's no longer, no more. And I think that the emphasis on current form, one, could be just trying to protect us from spoilers. They could totally dissipate. But I don't think that if there are surviving members, that they would really go separate ways, you know?
Yeah.
So theoretically, everyone could die at the end of the movie. I don't think that seems like the stakes we're up against. But in the event where any combination of these folks walk away, I think the Guardians will probably still exist in some form. And I know in the comics, there's a run of like the Dark Guardians, which are particularly interesting. And I don't know that we're moving into a dark way. But I do think that elements of that, specifically the relationship with characters like Star Fox, might play in because there are storylines throughout the comics that bring in characters like Nebula and Star Fox and Adam Warlock together. And I think we are headed down a path where that seems to be, you know, maybe a reimagining of the Guardians.
Yeah. Also, one of my sensings for phase 5, etc., as we move into phase 6, is we've been introduced to a lot of teams. Like, to me, this team up thing, you know, phase 1 through 3, we had, or the Infinity Saga, it was all about the Avengers. Now we're going to be introduced to all these other teams. At the time, I thought it was going to be the Midnight Suns, the Fantastic Four, and they were going to have to battle Kang as team units in different places, wherever their specialties were. And this is our cosmic team. So I just assume that they will continue to be our cosmic team and fight whatever cosmic version of Kang we encounter. But technically, I guess, are the Fantastic Four a cosmic team, and are the Marvels a cosmic team?
I think so. Well, I saw something really interesting earlier today that was talking about. So we have this movie, and then we have the Marvels, and then we don't touch the cosmic side of the MCU again until the Fantastic Four. And I think whether it be in TV shows or in film, we don't touch it again until I think it's 2025. And so there has to be some type of relationship or connection between those things. And I think a lot of that really may live, again, like relationships with characters like Star Fox, which haven't been really explored yet. But we know in the comics, he has a deep relationship with characters like Captain Marvel, with Spectrum, with these other individuals. And so I think that there is a really good connection, a really good possibility we'll see that connection kind of start to manifest in this film, especially as we go into the Marvels next. Specifically, you know how the last time we saw the Guardians, other than the holiday special, was in Thor: Love and Thunder, and they went their way to check out different missions, save other parts of the universe. And I think that to some degree we have to pick up on what happened in that time frame. Whether or not we really spend much time with it, I think it's going to be debatable. But certainly when they're off on their escapades, going to save different parts of the galaxy, it owes, the film deserves to show us some of that, right? So I think it's a possibility that we see other characters like that, maybe introduced, maybe discussed more in this film. Maybe they go to part of the Kree Skrull War. Maybe they, kind of intervene in part of that we know is getting ready to come up in the Marvels next.
So we transition. So we're talking cameos and things like who we think might appear.
Well, I think it's part of the plot as well, right? So I do think that there is potentially at least a connection in terms of understanding the backstory of where they've been the past few months, the other issues that they've been dealing with, I think can absolutely intersect with projects like the Marvel and projects like the Fantastic Four that we see coming up, given that they're all in the same cosmic corner of the MCU.
So historically, James Gunn has been trusted by Kevin Feige to introduce some major concepts that a lot of things have been built on. So, for example, the Eternals were introduced to us in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. That's where we saw, oh my gosh, I don't remember his name, but the Power Stone. That's the first time we saw it in Eternal, not in Eternal, Celestial. Sorry.
Okay. I'm with you if you say that. With the Eternal in my head, I'm just trying to, yeah.
Eternal, Celestial. They showed us, I don't remember his name, but it was the Celestial that had the Power Stone, and it was like a flashback. Looking it up real quick.
Yeah, I got you.
Talking about it while we go. But they established that, and I saw an interview with James Gunn and him talking about being responsible for something that's going to be carried out throughout, different projects in the MCU when you're the first person that does it. So the way we see the Celestials, that vision, that image, originated in Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's true. It's very true. I'm trying to think through what the other post-credit scenes were in the other Guardians of the Galaxy movies.
And that wasn't a post-credit with the Celestial, by the way. That was right dead smack.
Right, that was in the film. But it had me thinking about, like, in terms of what they introduce, because they have introduced big concepts before, even in the films we've just kind of seen them flying through space. We're able to get a better visual of the structures there, and it is a Guardians film as well, where we do see the Watchers, right? Where we see like the group of Watchers with like Stan Lee in that cameo scene.
I feel like yes. I think so.
I'm pretty sure that's a second Guardians film. Let's see.
Or even more insight into like the Kree and the oh gosh. Help me out. The hero's name is the name of all the people. We were just talking about them the other day.
The Nova Corps?
That's Nova Corps. Sheesh.
Yeah.
That's how we know about what's happening in terms of cosmic relations, is through the Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's true. And a lot of people have been rumoring for a while that we're going to get a Nova project. Whether or not I think that, I personally don't necessarily think that is going to happen. That there's I don't see a huge corner of the fandom really calling for that project, at least at this time. But it's certainly a possibility that we at least meet that character, especially when we do already know the Nova Corps. And people advertise this film. James Gunn talks about this film being a really good closure for what we've learned so far, and a really good bookend. And so maybe wrapping things up with places that we've been, with characters that we've met, including the Nova Corps, would be beneficial to the story that they're trying to tell.
So last we seen the Nova Corps, they were, I don't remember the name of the planet, but they were destroyed, or at least attacked by Thanos, because that's how Thanos gets the Power Stone. But that's kind of left open-ended. They didn't tell us what happened with them. Perhaps we get Nova. All right, there's my big prediction, plot, and
what is it?
Appearance. We're going to see Nova, the actual character, be introduced in this film.
Nova. Okay. So I'm looking at the post-credit scenes from Guardians 2. All three of them were Guardians post-credit scenes. First one showed that Kraglin tried to control Yondu's arrow, which I cannot wait to see him nail on the big screen. Two, that Sylvester Stallone's character reunited with his crew. And third, we had the creation of Adam Warlock, all three being post-credit scenes, all three being about the Guardians. I'm going to pull up what the ones in the first one were, but if that is a similar pattern where we see post-credit scenes kind of themed after the Guardians themselves, what would you imagine seeing in our post-credit scenes for this film?
What our characters are going to be up to after this. So I'm sure they'll give us some type of resolution for the team, like, okay, you're going to go here. But then what does that actually look like? I mean, if they're sticking with Guardians themed things. So like if Nebula continues on, maybe we see Nebula about to meet the rest of the Eternals, the Eternals, the actual Eternals this time. I said the right thing, not the Celestials. Maybe that's a Star Fox thing. Or maybe Rocket meets Star Fox if Rocket is still alive, or something like that.
See, I don't think that we can, and maybe we will, but I don't think that we can really revisit a character that we've only met in a post-credit scene in another post-credit scene. I think that's one of the things we've complained about over the course of phase 4 is that we've had so many pieces put on the board, but we don't see how they're connected yet. And Feige has kind of promised us that phase 5 is going to be an opportunity to start seeing those building blocks come together. Let's say we do bring that conversation into a post-credit scene, we don't then have the opportunity to really explore that for several more movies. This seems like the best opportunity for me, at least in my mind, to get some of those characters, especially Star Fox and the Eternals, like brought back onto our screen in conversation.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was trying to assist and look up what the post-credit was for the first movie. And in doing a search, it was trying to show me the post-credits for this movie. And
yeah, you got to be really careful. It was Howard the Duck.
Oh, okay.
And that's the only one popping up. I can't remember if there was another one. I'm very bad about placing which post-credit scene happens with what movie. But it's saying, yeah. And that was from 2014.
Sure there was more than one.
What was that?
Relatively sure there was more than one. I remember the Howard the Duck thing because Howard the Duck, I used to watch Howard the Duck, the movie, back in the day.
That's perfect. Were you satisfied with that post-credit back then?
I was.
Yeah.
It was nice to see Howard the Duck on the screen. When I was little, I don't know why I was excited about Howard the Duck, but I was.
But listen, the point you made a minute ago is, I think, really fair about James Gunn being trusted to start kind of something new in the Marvel universe. But one thing we really have to consider as well is he's about to jump ship to DC. So how much was Feige willing to even reveal to him about the future of the MCU throughout production, both in terms of what he can include in the plot, but also what post credits he's going to, maybe throw on. Do you think that his jump to DC would change how Feige would interact with this project?
Even if it did, I think these conversations happened a long time ago before that transition would have taken place. So if you're pivotal to the direction of the MCU, those are foundational conversations. So I think a few years ago, they decided what was going to happen 10 years from now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty sure James Gunn already knows.
Yeah. I think it's true for the most part, but Marvel does have to adapt quite a bit with things that happen. Or like we can see, what was it? Falcon and the Winter Soldier had to change its entire plot because of COVID, because it was about a virus. And so certain things do have to adapt, even if we do have these big milestones that we want to get through. And obviously right now, the future of King the Conqueror is in question, which could drastically impact some of the stories that they want to tell. Because if you'd asked me this question about, a post-credit scene a month or two ago, that I would have argued to you that I think that Kang is going to be in this movie, or that he's going to be in a post-credit scene, because he has to be omnipresent in movies moving forward. But I don't think in this moment that Marvel is going to include any reference to that greater storyline right now, because it's not really worth the risk at this point, with Loki coming out this summer to answer whatever questions we need to have answered.
Yeah. All right, so we've talked about the plot, some of the surprise appearances. Mm-hmm. How do you think it ends?
Okay. I think for this, we should go character by character and just say what we think that their fate is. I don't think that
the lightning round. Can we call this a lightning round?
Yeah, sure. Right. Sure, we can go quick with it. That's fine. All right. But I definitely think some people are gonna die, some will not. But overall, I do think they are gonna stay together, though. So let's start out with.
Wait, all right. Before you do, this is what the lightning round can consist of.
Oh.
They die. Answer that really quickly. That's a yes or no. And then if they're still alive, what's going to happen to them?
Okay, so let's start off with Rocket.
Okay, I'll go first. Alive. Rocket will be the new leader of the new version of the Guardians.
I agree exactly. I don't think I think Disney would be making a goofy decision to kill off such a lovable character.
Yeah.
So okay, what about Peter?
Peter dead. And there's nothing else I need to say about that, because he can't do anything. I think Peter dies. And I'll expand on that when we get to another character.
Okay. I have been debating whether or not I think Peter dies. In this moment, I will say yes, specifically because I think he may, well, it's same like you, it's him or another character. For me, it's either him or Gamora. Both of them don't walk out alive.
And okay, let's do this now. Say Gamora. Say the name.
Okay, Gamora. What about?
Dead. She dies. I think Peter and Gamora have to go together.
Okay.
She will express her returned love for him, right? They'll fall in love, but then they'll both perish, sacrifice themselves or something. To me, that
Okay.
sacrifice is worth more, but also leaves them at their last moment with love.
I like that. I really like, because the part I haven't been able to really resolve on that is what they do with Peter's story if Gamora dies again versus like what they do with Gamora's story if Peter dies. I think both of them dying together would actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What
And
about
that will
Nebula?
motivate
Oh,
Rocket, that will motivate other
mhm.
characters. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What do you think about Nebula though?
Nebula alive, mourning her sister, finding family, and remaining a part of the Guardians and being Rocket's number two.
I have a hot take here. I think
Oh,
Nebula lives. I would love to see a version of Nebula that is like Nebula Star-Lord. I think that is like prefaced a little bit. In the comics, we have other versions of Star, like T'Challa Star-Lord. I think that there is a possibility. And Nebula takes on many other forms. She's like Kang Nebula and stuff at different points. Um, I think it would be a really cool full circle for her to now kind of take on a role that kind of represents humanity in the way that it does. And I think that we've seen some levels of foreshadowing for something like that in terms of her power set in the commercials. I think it is certainly biologically possible for her as well. I think that she's going to take on a much stronger leadership role as well. But I think there's a chance that we see Nebula quite literally try to replace, not try to replace, but fill the role of Star-Lord on this team.
I like it. I like it.
I think it'd be fun. I think she earned her time in the sun now, you know.
Okay.
What about Drax?
Drax is gone. I have
Yeah.
no explanation. Drax is just gone.
Dave Batista will pay them to let him go. Like he would love to be free. Um,
And I love him in that role, but he's gone.
yeah. Mantis?
Mantis stays. The celestial bloodline lives on in the Guardians.
I like that. What about Kraglin?
Kraglin stays, remnant of years past. So if we lose Peter and we've lost already Yondu, we need that Ravager presence on the team, and I think that is what he does. You don't give him that Mohawk thing and then kill him. No, he's got to
No.
be there.
Well, the one argument I've heard talking about Kraglin is that James Gunn just loves to kill his brother in movies and in productions.
I forgot
And
about
so there,
that.
you know, if his brother is no longer, directing, do we know that the actor even wants to continue the role and kind of what that looks like? But I do think ultimately Kraglin is going to come out alive. I do. But certainly understand the room for skepticism there.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Groot?
Groot alive because he better be.
Yeah, you can't take him away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay. What about
they're going to give us different versions of Groot because technically, I believe this is not the same Groot that we saw in the first film.
It's Groot's son?
Yeah. So like Groot will continue to live on, should continue to live on.
I think so too. I think so too. Because Groot has already had to sacrifice, a bit throughout the series. And to break up the Rocket and Groot duo would just be cruel. I think Vin Diesel's down for a while if they want him to be too.
Yeah.
Okay, last member on my screen right here, Cosmo. Little Cosmo.
Well, you can't kill Cosmo because we don't kill dogs and puppies, right? We can't do that.
This
But
movie could though. This movie
Cosmo
goes to a lot of cute animals, that I know.
like to me, it would be an unnecessary sacrifice for Cosmo to go. I think we haven't seen enough of Cosmo yet. I think Cosmo will continue to be on the team. Yeah, that's it. Cosmo stays.
I think so too. So that if we're in agreement about that, then means that our team at the end will be Rocket, Nebula, Mantis, Kraglin, Groot, and Cosmo. And maybe Adam, right? Like maybe Adam Warlock will join. I think there's a really good chance that he at least entertains the idea towards the end of the movie about joining, if not.
I think it makes full sense for him to be a part of the team because Adam, when he's born, is like a baby, right? He doesn't really know much. I think Rocket and Nebula have a lot to offer him in terms of his development. So they, Rocket and Nebula to an extent were both created, right? And have issues with their creator. and their
Right.
purpose. And I think they can help him. So yeah. I think we might, okay, hot take. I think we might see Adam join the team much sooner than the end of the film. Maybe.
Yeah, it's super possible. If that happens, then is he helping fight the High Evolutionary?
Yes.
I imagine the main conflict of the film being between the Guardians and the High Evolutionary, right? And Adam as the tool of the High Evolutionary is the expectation. Doesn't mean it has to happen that way. How do you think that switch is going to happen? What's going to make him change teams?
Without being introduced to his MCU version, I don't know what motivates that character to say he has a change of heart, because I don't know what his heart is. Is it just whatever, like a machine, like Aisha said to do this, so I have to do this? You know, like what is it that motivates this particular character? So I don't know.
Man. Okay, Malcolm, do you have any big final predictions you want to make about this film before we go in tonight?
The
Anything
Fantastic
you have
Four.
to have on the record? Yeah, let's talk about it.
I don't know. It's just everything that comes out with Marvel until the Fantastic Four appear, I will say Fantastic Four. I do think a cosmic group is the group that could do it, and I don't want to put this on. I guess I'll put it on the record now. I actually think it's going to happen in the Marvels, but because this movie is happening right now, I'm going to throw it out there that some form of an Easter egg will happen, and we'll get our four fantastic folks.
Yeah, and we talked about it the other day. I agree that I think that we are going to get something in the Marvels. However, from a marketing perspective, if they really want people to see a post-credit scene, they would put it in this movie over the Marvels. I think the Marvels may be about, like, going in, I'm more excited to see the Marvels. That's my truth. Yeah. But I think the consensus in the general public is a lot of excitement around Guardians 3. And to be able to to finish this trilogy and maybe kick off a new one at the same time, kind of like we talked about earlier, by giving us a post-credit, giving us a reference or something like that, seems really possible to me. Especially again, we only have the Marvels, really in our cosmic MCU world, and we have to have some level of introduction. I guess we don't. Theoretically, we could just walk into the Fantastic Four movie and have nothing before that, but that doesn't feel like the way Marvel really rolls. So I think that is a very, very fair possibility that we get some type of post-credit that just shows us a little something. I'm really excited for when we do our Marvels video, though, to kind of unpack the direction we think they're going to go. It was a great conversation, but I don't think this particular film will really dive into, much of that context of their origin.
I'm going to say this in 30 seconds because it's not really related, but it's related to the Fantastic Four. We know that they don't want to show us another origin story movie for the Fantastic Four. It's been done twice already. They did the same thing with Spider-Man, and just revisiting Spider-Man, it's like, well, they didn't actually tell us about the spider bite and all of that. They didn't go into detail. Well, how do you do it? You introduce us to the character in another film. So Captain America Civil War is where we were introduced to Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man had his movie, and we went along like we knew him the entire time. That to me indicates that at some point, the Fantastic Four are just going to appear if they follow that same structure in a movie, so that when their movie comes, it's just like, okay, we've already seen them. Where that's going to happen, no clue. But I'm excited. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I completely agree with you. I think that they need to introduce them to us somewhere where we get a gist of like what's up. I don't think they're going to give us a total origin story, but they have to have some type of explanation for us about why we haven't seen them before. Just like in the Eternals, they had to give us a line about why they didn't interfere, whether or not we think it's satisfying, whether or not we saw everything we wanted to see. Those are all separate questions. They have to at least give us some idea of where this group has been in this time. And I think that there's especially a lot of potential as we move into the Marvels to do that in a way that doesn't take much screen time, doesn't become an origin story, but still gives us an explanation or understanding maybe of where these people have been. It is possible that is something that happens in this film, right? Maybe while we're off, around the galaxy, looking at all of these other threats, maybe that's where we run into the Fantastic Four, who's dealing with another cosmic threat, or something like that could easily be in the film and then not take up much time, but still be awesome.
Yeah, it's not likely that that's happened because they haven't been fully confirmed and casted yet that we know of.
Right.
However,
why I think the Marvels is perfect timing, right? Because it comes out in November and it gives them time to add a like a 2-minute post-credit scene. Not even that it would be that long, but
So do
it
you
gives
think
them
that's the
time to
reason why they
film.
pushed the schedule back a little bit? You think that they?
I don't think that's the motivating factor, but it could be part of it. I think they just realized they don't have a film coming out for a year and they needed to spread.
Okay, so let's talk post credits.
Okay.
What do you think we're gonna get?
So I think I know one of them.
Okay.
I'm not gonna comment on that because it would not have been
I'm
on
gonna
my
ask you.
radar. What?
Done. I'm gonna ask you. I just want the spoiler. I want it, but not for our
You
audience.
don't. You really don't. You really don't want the spoiler. It's I don't even want to give any type of like emotional response to how I feel about it or what
Okay.
I think. I'll talk to you after the film for sure. Um, but the one thing that I've really like held on to for a while coming into this is that we're gonna get an Eternals thing. I know I've said that like 5 or 6 times already, but I think we're gonna pick up perhaps maybe with where we left off with Arishem and Cersei and these characters before. I think we might get a little glimpse into what's happening there. It's my belief again that during the film we might get some plot in terms of Star Fox and maybe some of the characters there. Star Fox and Nebula both having that relationship to Thanos. I think it would be very natural to have some type of conversation there, especially as we deal with grief. We know this last phase 4 is about grief. Phase 5 is us coming together, that idea of love. But both Gamora in the timeline that she's in, she just helped kill her dad. Right, like she didn't go through the same like process that everyone else did in that separation. She was still living in a timeline where she was subservient to Thanos. Nebula, again, having to deal with those memories. And that's not that far off in their history for them. So I do think that it would be possible to maybe like a funeral scene. Not that I think that they're throwing Thanos a funeral, but that there's, although they do in the comics at times. But I do think it's possible that we get some of that in the film. But I definitely think, especially given that we have like Nowhere being a major element, maybe we get happening in my brain right now. Maybe we get a Thunderbolts teaser. Maybe we get something there because we know. Again, I think there's going to be the Eternals connection. We know that there's a celestial connection in terms of the head of Nowhere. We're talking about mining celestial blood being a part of what the High Evolutionary uses in his creations, which you and I haven't even talked about mutants yet. Like there's a lot of theorizing we've done about the celestial blood maybe being what causes somebody to be a mutant in the MCU. Again, I think that type of conversation might come more in the Marvels than it will in this film, but it is really possible that we talk about mutants being species that were tested on by a higher power. So it could be the Celestials, it could be the High Evolutionary using celestial blood to give us mutants, which would actually, holy heck, it's happening in my brain right now, which would actually really tie in the theories we had before about mutants coming up in the Eternals movie, right? Because we were talking about the Celestials being the ones responsible, the deviants for the deviants and the Eternals and mutants on in mankind. So maybe it is mutant, or maybe it is celestial blood, and that concept might get introduced to us in this film. I know I hit a lot of points in that. My brain was connecting them all. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts about like Eternal showing up, mutant showing up?
Definitely, I feel strongly about Eternals because their whole sphere, their universe that they live in was introduced to us in the Guardians. Like I was talking about the Celestials before. So the natural like progression of that is to now also include the Eternals, right? So the Guardians are very aware of the Celestials. No other character group or whatever has acknowledged the Celestials other than the Eternals. So if you're going to transition me into the Celestials being talked about, a part of the conversation in the MCU, the broader MCU, this is the perfect place to do it because once the Guardians acknowledge it, we know they have relationships with our Earth heroes. So they can bring that conversation to them. You know what I mean? Or however that is. So
that could totally, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but that could totally be a post-credit scene in and of itself where it's like whoever's left of the Guardians talking to like Val or someone about Arishem, or not Arishem, about Tiamat in the ocean, right? Trying to explain like, oh no, this is what this guy is, or there could be some overlap.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I could also see them encountering, like you said, Star Fox and whoever else, Angelina Jolie and whoever else was on that ship at that time. And having a conversation. Like if they're on their way to wherever Arishem is and they run into the Guardians, the remaining Guardians, that could be a conversation. Because Star Fox, to me, would know, like you said, who Gamora is or who Nebula is if Nebula, as we say, survives. So then the conversation could happen and she could be like, your brother died, and he could be like, I already know that, but this is what's
Right.
happening right now.
Well, that actually would make a lot of sense too, because it's the Star Fox post-credit scene we got in the Eternals. And so it would kind of be a full circle thing to bring this character that lives kind of in this hybrid world between the Eternals and the Guardians back onto our screens in the Guardians. And I'm going to be so honest, Malcolm, if we go to the movies tonight and I see Harry Styles on my screen, I am a happy girl. I'm a happy gal. And I think that really is possible.
It makes perfect sense. And it also makes sense then that if he says there's a threat to Earth, and it's Erisham, because Erisham is coming back to judge the Earth, right? That's the whole thing that's happening with Eternals. Then he would need to warn them. And I feel like they would feel honor bound to save Peter's planet, home planet, because he has sacrificed himself for his family.
Now, my question for you, let's pivot really quickly. What do you think about the mutant conversation?
It's very possible it happens with the High Evolutionary. Because of who he is and what he does, I think it's a good starting point for an explanation as to how the mutations happen on Earth. And there also might be different sources of mutation, depending on who and what. Okay, here's my wild theory. And I'm going to do it in 10 seconds. Nightcrawler is going to appear to us as a citizen on Earth 2 or Counter Earth, whatever you want to call it, created by the High Evolutionary. He has powers, animal-like appearance. Bam, Nightcrawler. Not going to happen. There you go.
Tell me why him?
Because he's a mutant and he's furry. He has a tail. It just, to me, he could be walking around Counter Earth, and it would make sense with what we've seen so far. Yeah.
I think
that's the type of person who would be rebelling against the High Evolutionary on the planet.
I don't think there's anyone on that planet rebelling against the High Evolutionary. There's a scene where he's talking about like what was wrong with Earth when he went to visit it, and he's talking about like essentially the rebellious nature of mankind. So I don't think there is any room for dissent in his kingdom.
Perhaps. All right, that's my hot take.
Well, we have thrown some hot takes out here today. I think it's easy to walk away, with all of this on our splattering to say like, oh, we got it. But what's the one that you felt really confident in that you sold today? What's the one theory that you would like put money down for?
Because I don't have a lot of it, I don't want to put any of it on anything, but or two. I would say Peter and Gamora both dying in this film together. Not together. It can't be like, I die and then I die because you died. No Romeo and Juliet. It has to be together. They have to sacrifice themselves together. And I think that'll happen.
Okay. I recognize that I'm doubling down on something that is not like most likely, right? But out of my outlandish claims today, I think that we are going to get like I will hear Cersei speak on my screen. Like I will see Cersei. Cersei is back. So we are picking up in that with some variation of that context out left. Whether it is we see it, we hear it, we pick up a week later, it's in the moment. I don't know exactly how it's going to manifest, but I think we will get not closure, but I think we will get answers about what happened next.
Okay.
Well, that is all we have for y'all today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to us. May the 4th be with you all this evening as we walk into the Guardians.
Right.
All right.